Welcome to the Project Vanguard podcast, home of the community of veterans in energy, where we explore the journeys of veterans leading in the energy space. We're building American energy dominance through an all-of-the-above approach, where energy security is national security, and increasing the veteran workforce in energy is the best way to advance our industry. I'm your host, Kevin Doffing. Today's guest is Michelle Nicholson, an Army veteran, sustainability expert, and community sentiment strategist. Born in South Africa, Michelle came to the U.S. in the 1990s, joined the military after 9/11, and then deployed to Iraq as a broadcast technician, where she helped run the radio station and saw firsthand what it means to live without energy security. Now at Solas Energy, Michelle helps clean energy companies understand how local communities feel about their projects. Because if you don't understand the ground game, you won't get anything built. Her work connects the dots between energy infrastructure, landowner sentiment, and the political currents shaping permitting battles across this country. In this episode, we talk about what she learned in Baghdad, why the power outages in Texas feel oddly familiar, and how solar and wind can help farms stay inside of families for the next generation. We also dig into Senate Bill 819 in Texas, what's really at stake for rural Texas, and why veterans, especially women veterans, are quietly becoming leaders in energy. If you're curious about how military service shapes purpose after the uniform, or how energy policy affects your neighborhood school, this episode hits home. Let's get into it. So thanks for joining us today. Michelle, can you just talk a little bit about what are you doing right now in the industry with Solus?
Sure. So I've been with Solus for about 3 years. In fact, this month is my 3-year anniversary. I work on the consulting team and I focus mostly on understanding community sentiment around renewable energy, specifically development, understanding how communities are opposing or accepting development in their communities, and looking from the very high state level down to the hyper local level. So I do a lot of research for our clients so that when they are going into a development, they understand what the temperature and the climate is in the municipalities, townships, villages, cities that they're trying to permit. Generally understanding, going in for special use permits. And so I do a lot of research on that aspect. My other part of my job is I do a lot of due diligence on merger and acquisitions, assisting and understanding the risk analysis of land, title, mineral development rights, and then basically going through generally the development side of things and looking at permitting and environmental, although I mostly focus on the land aspect and the community sentiment.
Did y'all have anybody at the ACP Siting and Permitting Conference recently?
Yeah. Chloe Ford was there from our
Oh,
office. So
okay. I just got back, so
do you learn a lot? I know there's been a lot of emphasis on the community sentiment side of things with siting, getting things approved, and then also I'm sure some of the bills that are coming down about siting, like 819.
Yeah. I mean, that's where the opposition is trying to find a wedge and, stopping the freight train that is renewables or, any kind of technological advance. I think that the easy projects, the 500 megawatts on like 2 property owners' land in West Texas, those projects have been built. And so now, you have this huge surge in organized opposition. There's a guy out there, it's like Johnny Appleseed with a PowerPoint going around teaching people how to oppose without coming across as whatever. Like, say you're for everything, but be really harsh on renewables in this way,
Yeah.
right?
I wonder if we could use the new bill that's just been put through the school vouchers, right? Because that's really going to affect rural communities. And so,
Oh, yeah, it's going to decimate a lot of these communities that, are trying to educate their population. Like, what are you going to do when where I live in Houston, we have a bunch of recapture, even though like over half of my district is Title I or, low income.
yeah.
We have to give up a bunch of our property taxes. What happens when you can't give that up because, the 40% of the district that is wealthy continues to go to,
The private schools. Yeah.
yeah, well, there's just going to be less recapture for those rural districts. It's going to decimate and create a 2-tiered system of education. Speaking of which, Michelle, I feel like you might have had an experience with a 2-tier education system somewhere in your background.
There was a very large gap between my undergraduate and my postgraduate experience, or I suppose my master's degree.
And I know where you grew up, but tell everybody and also explain the
Oh,
accent for our military veteran
sure.
audience.
Yeah, so I was actually born and raised in South Africa. We emigrated to the States in 1994, where I left halfway through my senior year in South Africa because our year is January through December. So we left in June and I came to the States, to Georgia. And so I ended up going to Kennesaw State University in Georgia for 2 years and then transferring to University of Georgia, where I graduated with a degree in psychology and ended up going into recruiting, which was fascinating, and then ended up going into hospitality. And during that time, it was after 9/11, I really felt passionate about wanting to give back to this country that had given me such wonderful opportunities. I was actually on a Rotary exchange at that point. Well, not exchange, just a Rotary visit to Costa Rica. So as U.S. ambassadors, we went over and had a fantastic time. We were actually in Costa Rica when the towers fell. And it impacted me so much that when I got back a couple of months later, I actually ended up enlisting in the U.S. military. And so it was a delayed entry program. I ended up going to a recruiter and saying, this is what I want to do. There was some concern because I wasn't a U.S. citizen at that point. I took the ASVAB and they were like, well, you could qualify for all these jobs, but because you're not a U.S. citizen, we can only give you these.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is fine. It was during the Bush, era, and I knew that they had a really fantastic program where if you enlisted, you served a certain amount of time, you would be able to become a citizen a lot faster than if you were doing.
I worked with a couple guys like that. It was great.
Yeah. I mean, that was not why I enlisted, but what happened really impacted me. And because of growing up in South Africa, I really wanted to do something for the US. And so November of 2002, I went off to basic training, and I was quite one of the older, young soldiers. I'd already had a college degree. Everyone's like, why aren't you going the OCS route? And I'd have to explain, I'm not a US citizen, I'm South African. And then ended up going to AIT, Advanced Individual Training, at the Defense Information School in Fort Meade,
Nice.
which was about a 9-month program, because I was doing broadcast technician, which was really fascinating. It was really enjoyable. And I got out in 2003, actually graduated September 11th, 2003, and then got a job in the safari industry working for a safari tour operator based out of Houston, and moved there in 2004. When I moved to Houston, basically that's where my reserve unit was. And so I was actually in Bryan, so worked with an engineering battalion with a bunch of Aggies.
Yeah, and I gig 'em.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good experience. And then in 2005, I was transferred to a unit out of, I think it was like Tyler. Anyway, it was a broadcast operations detachment. And so that's where I deployed with in 2005. And so I had a very unique experience. We ran the Freedom Journal Iraq. We ran the radio station, and I was based in Baghdad the entire time, but got to see really firsthand what it was like to live for a year in a place that didn't really have energy security. We had brownouts continually. Mostly, I think we ran on generators most of the time. It was interesting during broadcast and running radio shows because sometimes you just lose power.
So
So
this is my favorite question for anybody who's deployed to combat.
sure.
What is the stupidest thing you saw happen?
Oh, people clearing their weapons and forgetting they were loaded.
There was that. Yeah, it's like days without an incident, and then it keeps staying as single digits. What was the funniest thing you saw happen?
Oh gosh. Well, I was very lucky as far as my experience went because I was in the green zone. So my favorite thing was to go and watch, because we, didn't have access to any alcohol, but we could watch people get drunk. And so on Thursday nights, they had karaoke. It was really, really funny to see the contractors just singing their little hearts out while almost falling off the stage. So that was probably the funniest. That was very entertaining for us to
And
go
these
and
were
watch.
the contractors, not American contractors, right?
I don't know. Maybe American contractors. Yeah, American contractors. We had Australians, Italians, because it was the NATO worked out of there too. So they all had access.
We only had Nigerian or Liberian contractors on the base that I was at. So that's
Yeah,
why
no,
I asked. Like,
we had
I
it
never
was,
saw an American contractor. I hear they existed. I hear they did very well for themselves.
they did.
I did not run into them.
Although, every now and then you'd meet one who was like, oh, I'm a sniper, tank driver, airborne ranger. Who jumped out of a helicopter with a parachute. And we're like, okay, very cool. Yeah, and I'd say probably the most memorable experience was Thanksgiving of 2005, where non-potable water was used for the ice sculptures, where the shrimp was placed for the food, and everyone got sick, and nobody went to work for 2 days, and it was a very terrible experience. which you can only really have in Baghdad or really deployed.
Yeah. Well, so how did that experience kind of inform, as we do a lot of stuff now focused on energy security, how did that influence or impact that view you have now?
Well, it just made me realize how incredibly lucky we are here to have a secure grid that has a very small likelihood of being sabotaged in a terrorist attack. I was just incredibly grateful to have safe running water. You were encouraged not to brush your teeth with the water that came out the pipe. Just the fact that, as I said, sometimes we'd have broadcasts and in the middle of it, the lights would go out. So just lack of secure infrastructure, I suppose, would be a good way to say it. And just you really kind of continually, I mean, even though I was in Baghdad in the green zone, there was always potential for something to happen. Most of the time it was, incoming Fatouche rockets that you have no control over. And so it just made me so grateful when I got home to realize just how safe and secure we are here. And that it took me a while to realize, like, not every bang or, you know, thunderclap was something coming for me. It was what goes on normally in the background in suburbia. And whereas when you're living there for a year and you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
what's this? Let's run to the bunker, because that's kind of what was normal.
My first job after the Army, there were a bunch of other Army officers that had been hired by this company. And I was like, hey, do you guys notice that there's that car that's been parked on the off ramp into the office
Yeah.
for a few days? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, you guys ever just like drive by and like kind of swerve around it because you just worry that it's a, VBID, a vehicle borne IED? And they're like, what are you talking about? We're in like Pittsburgh. And then the next day, a guy comes in, he's like, thanks. I couldn't even drive that way. I had to like loop around 45 minutes to take the
Yeah.
other way into the building. Thanks for that. And I'm like, yeah, we should probably call to get that thing towed.
I mean, I had a very uneventful year there. I think more likely people did stupid stuff and got bored than, we're in the line of fire. I didn't leave the wire just because what my job entailed. But there certainly were times where, we were working in basically the conference center, putting together the translation services from Arabic into English. And the people who did the translation services for us were petrified that whoever was on stage would know who was behind the glass translating. I'd never lived in a fear like that. And I'd have to reassure them, they can't see in, you can just see out. They're not going to recognize your voices. You can just translate what's being said, and it's being recorded and it's being broadcast. And I've never known what it's like to live in that kind of fear. And it, again, just made me really realize how blessed we are. And, sometimes there's beauty and craziness. And part of my job was going up onto the roof to fix the satellites. So when we broadcast, and sometimes it was at nighttime, and sometimes I'd see traces going across the sky. And it would just kind of be this surreal moment where there's like silence. And then you'd just see these lights, which in a way from a distance are kind of these beautiful flashes. And you're like, well, that's not really what's happening, Michelle. So let's be real. There's, gunfire going on over there or a firefight. But yeah, just a very unique experience, kind of being surrounded by I guess you could say, like, the state political aspect of trying to help a country get back on its feet. Whereas I know people on the outside of the wire really had very, very different experiences. So everyone's individual, it's all relative to what's going on. But yeah, definitely, as you said, just sometimes going over bridges or, yeah, seeing a car parked for a while. Or for me, it was like, you don't have to put this in, but just dead animals along the side of the road. We did a story on that, and I'd have
Yep.
to, yeah, just like, oh, well, hopefully there's nothing inside them,
Yep. Yep. Nope. That's real. That was real.
And how do you tell your friends that?
Yeah. No, he's just like, we're just gonna keep moving.
We're just gonna keep moving. Just gonna, why'd you go around it? Oh, no reason. I just,
No reason. No reason. Yeah. No, I used to have to tell my wife that, like, why'd you drive around that box? And I'm like, I don't like just empty
it's
cardboard
the unknown,
boxes.
right? The unknown and potential that could be there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was some really good experiences that came out of it too. Just being exposed to seeing kind of the machine, the political machine. I got to meet Donald Rumsfeld. I got to meet President Bush. I got to meet Condoleezza Rice. Got to make sure that part of my job as a broadcast technician was setting up the green rooms. So when they came in to meet the troops, there was always an opportunity for them to be interviewed by Fox News, CNN, National Geographic, BBC. So that was my job, was making sure that the studio was operating correctly, myself and two other soldiers. So got to make sure their IFB was working, their mic was working, would sometimes sit in for them before they came in. So I got to talk to Wolf Blitzer and, some other really interesting people that I don't think I otherwise would have had that chance. And then some of the other really nice things we did was I don't know if you had the opportunity, or I don't know if you had kids at this stage, but we had this storytelling opportunity where we created a DVD basically, and we would film the dads or the moms reading bedtime stories to their kids.
Oh,
And so it was part of MWR. And so they were sent home with a recorded DVD of them reading a story and a little teddy bear. And so that was something really nice that we did that I feel helped soldiers and their families while they were apart. And then my only other claim to fame is I did a relaxation CD for soldiers. So you're feeling very sleepy right now. Your legs and arms are relaxed. Yep, and that was distributed to the mental health clinic. So somebody at some point listened to my voice, hopefully while they were going to sleep, and was soothed and calmed and relaxed.
nice. Yeah, no, it's always interesting when people come back, just the impact, kind of coming back to the energy stuff, just how good we have it.
Yeah,
I think that we brought it up when we were testifying a couple weeks
yeah,
ago at the Texas State Senate, you and I, just the energy scarcity that was there, right?
absolutely.
They only have one form of energy. They only really have one revenue source. Like oil exports
Yeah,
was like 95% of their revenue. This undiversified power gen really put them at risk. And then you see when that kind of gets turned off and how easily it kind of got turned off, during the invasion,
yeah.
it just jeopardized life there. Mothers not being able to, like, keep things cold for their kids and, not having power to just have any basic level of life. It just really left a mark on me, and when I see the stuff that's focused on scarcity and restricting energy and doing things like that, whether it's somebody claiming, we should ban fracking or somebody who's trying to, like, pass a siting bill that infringes on personal property rights and tries to curtail something, like, I just can't stand that stuff because I don't think sometimes everybody in this country realizes how good we have
Oh,
it.
absolutely. And sometimes I feel everyone needs to travel to a country that does not have the infrastructure or the wealth that we have to really understand how grateful we should be for what we should have, and how if we create scarcity, we could end up in a situation like that. And one story brings to mind, as I said, we worked with quite a few translators. And so they were paid quite well because they were working for the US. Most of them tried to have generators for their houses because sometimes they didn't have any power. And a lot of them had young kids. And the generators were great, but then they had to find a way to get fuel. And because there was such a scarcity, a lot of it was purchased on the black market. A lot of it was watered down. It didn't always run. Then the generator would break. And it was a constant fear of, are we going to be able to, in the winter, keep warm? And then in the summertime, at least keep our fridge on or, freezer on so that our food could
Yeah.
last.
We're saying it like it's this unimaginable zombie apocalypse where we would be in a situation like that, but how many people are buying generators? I mean, I got solar and batteries in my house because the grid keeps failing in Texas and it's unreliable. We've underinvested in our infrastructure for decades. We now have the opportunity to invest in the next cycle of technology innovation, but we're running into these roadblocks. So, as you've gone through this, you're measuring community sentiment. You were there with me testifying to the Senate. Can you just talk about like what motivated you to come testify and what was your message there? If anything's changed, I mean, add to it.
Yeah, the counties that are opposed to that feel like they've lost control. It is taking the ability of counties away from them to make decisions. And we heard a lot of landowners and we heard a lot of
Yeah.
people from rural areas basically saying that there has been no new industry in the county since the early 1900s. And the fact that renewable energy has injected money into the school system, money into their municipalities, helped build roads, helped regreen things. That to me is vitally important. We need to be able to have counties make their own decisions, right? For me, I think that's what Texas is known for is freedom, economic freedom. property rights. I want to build what I want to build. And there's been a lot of research done on how solar panels specifically can help regenerate soils that have been overgrazed for years and years and years. Why not let it sit for a little while and help it regrow, help all the soils regenerate, right? Over tillage. And there's so much research that's been put into this that it kind of defies the whole purpose of what they're trying to do with 819. I just feel like it's kind of a blanket statement fits all instead of looking at what really can help add to our generation.
It's all about taking away, not adding to. Like, if you're going to have an all the above strategy and mindset for energy dominance, like we need it
Yeah.
all. We need a portfolio. We don't want to be bucketed into one thing. And the thing that struck me when we were hearing the testimony, because there were some landowners that were for the bill, but they were all like retirees from the city, right? They were not making their money from the land, which is fine. That's their choice. They don't have to sign a lease. But the people who are working the land, the people who make money off of it, the multi-generational farms, they desperately want it because in a lot of cases, it keeps the farm in the family and it diversifies them so that as, these oil leases are drastically dropping in royalty payment prices, they have
Yeah.
something else to sustain them. So I don't get it when, there are a lot of comments made by, one of the bill authors about this is counties versus big cities when that person makes all their money from big cities and businesses that they own in big cities. When it's taking choice and ability for these local owners, business owners, right? The land is their
Yes.
business, taking options off the table from these business owners. I mean, we would never tolerate it if they said, "Hey, we're gonna put these kinds of restrictions on whether or not you can do fracking within the county." Wouldn't happen, and I don't wanna see it happen, right? We just need a level playing field, and we just need it all.
The other reason I'm really passionate is because so many of us from the military are in this industry because it lends itself to that same kind of camaraderie, right? It's very structured. It's a very easy transition. And there's so much wonderful support. If you've been, I think, in any kind of military job, you've managed projects.
Yeah. Yeah, project management's, like, the number one way to get in.
Exactly. And if you're a cowboy, wind turbine technicians, great opportunity for those people who still want kind of that jolt of excitement, right? And for me, I love being in this industry because you meet so many fascinating people. You get to help so many different people, and you actually get to see the impact, right? So I loved being in travel. It was a fantastic experience, but I still had my GI Bill. And so basically signed up. I called Lipscomb University in Nashville and I was like, hey, you have a sustainable program, practices program. I'd really be interested. It's August. I see you start in September. Can I start? And they were so fantastic. But it really kind of gave me an insight into what I wanted to do. And I wanted to do something that I could actually, quantify. Like, I am adding this many gigawatts onto the grid by doing XYZ. If you're in this industry, you can actually quantify how much you've contributed to the grid. You can look at how much, carbon you've potentially taken off the table. So for me, that was really important and why I wanted to get into this industry. Initially, I was kind of more looking in the building side of energy efficiency, but this opportunity came along and it's been such a great, in fact, yeah, as I said, I started in April of 2002. I think I met you that month, American Clean
Was it
Power.
that early?
Yeah, and there were like three of us, right? And we're like, yay, veterans in energy. And now look at us. I was like, oh, we really need to figure out a way to get more people here because there has to be so many more people in our industry that come from military backgrounds. And it's great. And I think Project Vanguard is phenomenal because I've seen over the last, what, I think you started Slack in February.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like every day someone new joins, which is fantastic. And it's been great to reach out and speak to people directly about transitioning out of the military and what's that like and all the different types of jobs within the industry, right? And
So for anybody
understanding.
listening, if you go to the Project Vanguard website and you join, you automatically get a invite to our Slack channel. So it's got hundreds of veterans that work in clean energy, and you'll be prompted to go into the, start here channel and you introduce yourself. And I mean, the Marines all rah, rah, rah together. I know. So many Marines. I thought I said a no Marines. Like we had one and then just no plural, but
Yeah.
I got overridden apparently by the Marines. I was deployed in the Marine sector. Like once somebody shot at you,
Yeah.
in friendly fire, like there's a bond that you can do anything to each other. But yeah, no, so it's a great way. There's jobs channel. People are dropping jobs that they're hiring for. And I just always tell people like, listen, get in there, network at your pace, whether you're an
Yeah.
extrovert or an introvert, but we can help you get connected to the veteran recruiters. And we're not going to get you a job necessarily, but we will get you to the top of the stack. That's going to get you a screen call. It's up to you from there. But this is also the place to ask the stupid questions of like, people keep talking about megawatts. What's a kilowatt?
Right.
I mean, like stuff that I had to go Google,
Yeah.
when I was getting into it. I'm like, somebody said gigawatt, but I think they misspoke. They're like, no, 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 that just means more than a megawatt. I'm like, got it. Math.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Infantry guide. I don't get those things.
I don't know if we want to throw it out here, but SEIIA, they have a program where they give scholarships to veterans to do one of their programs, which is Solar 101. And so I learned that recently when I went to Solar, and then I gave out all the information I could on Project Vanguard. So yeah, there's a nice synthesis there, especially if people don't know what megawatts are.
Well, I mean, like, I remember when I first learned about it, it was only because I was doing one of those like big group recruiting sessions
Yeah,
and I was interviewing with a wind company, what eventually became EDPR. And
sure.
I just never thought about it. I mean, like, power was just there,
Yeah,
but this was at a time when load growth hadn't changed in 30 years and energy was boring. And once I started learning about it, and I just assumed it would change. I assumed wind and solar would take off. Like I just, it's the next technology thing. Like, but then once I started learning about it, I was like, this is the most exciting thing of it. I don't know why, but like it just
it
lit me
is.
up.
It's exciting to see, how much is being added to the grid daily. And I wasn't here. I think we moved June of 2021, so we missed out on Erie.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun.
However, the neighborhood that we moved into, they're connected to the hospital grid just above us, so they didn't lose power, but they all basically had pipes that burst. And then the lower half of the neighborhood was not connected to the small hospital just next to us, and they lost power completely. And just the school that my kids attended had to be closed, completely renovated, new floors, just because of everything that happened. And that's scary, and in fact, the first summer we lived here, which was 2021, the power went off constantly. We were on the lower part of the neighborhood, so weren't on the hospital grid. But yeah, the power would just go off. And Justin and I, my husband and I were like, like I'm from Africa, like it didn't happen this often because it was summer and it was super hot and there's unreliability. Now, I will say since 2021, it's less and less. And I really do believe that's because of the number of, gigawatts that have been added to the grid by solar and by wind in
Well,
Texas.
batteries is the
And
best
batteries.
firming
Yeah.
asset.
Yep.
I mean, I'm always surprised when I read articles that they're finding out like just how quick batteries come on and
Right.
balance. I mean, it exceeds a lot of expectations, even in the industry that
Right.
had, a lot of high expectations.
Right. Well, it regulates. So there's too much electricity, it can hold it. There's not enough, it can put it back, and it creates a balance, which is really vital,
Yeah.
especially on these extremely hot days that we have in the summer. And then this winter's been a little less cold, but I mean, there's been winters where it's been, everything
Yeah.
froze.
No. Uh, volatile. Volatility for
Yeah,
sure. So, Michelle, the big audience I think that is going to hear this, hopefully some people that are in positions to make a difference and, also talk to their elected officials about the things that are happening, but it's also veterans that are just interested in this industry. What advice would you have for them, for people looking to get into this industry?
sure. So, I mean, I've only been in the industry for 3 years, and I guess my number one suggestion would be curious. There's so many jobs within the industry, right? It's not just a wind technician or a solar installer. And there's not just developers and owners. I mean, there are so many different types of industries that impact what we do. And so I definitely say be curious, definitely network with people in the industry. So for veterans, join Project Vanguard. For people who aren't in the military but are interested in this, I certainly would look up programs that kind of give you an opportunity to learn about it. There's American Clean Power. That's a wonderful way to kind of find out like what is going on in the industry, what type of jobs are available. If you're a female and interested in this industry, there's a bunch of different programs that help women
Rise.
in Rise. Exactly, Rise. Yeah, WRISE. And they have chapters in Austin and Houston. And that's also a great way to kind of learn about the different jobs that are out there. I'm more on the veterans or the military spouse side because my husband's also active duty. So I kind of hit both of those. So there is Hiring Our Heroes. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. So I fill both buckets. There you go.
I would be remiss if I didn't go to my favorite joke with you, which is to thank you when you show up to a veteran event for your husband's service.
Right. Thank you. You're welcome.
What happens to
Thank your
every
husband for your
female
for his
veteran?
service.
Or you must be the spouse.
Yeah. I know. I'm
And in your
generally
case,
always.
you are, but you are also the veteran.
Yes. Yes. And I'm always generally the token female there, which I'm very proud of, Yeah. So
You do it well. You do it well.
the other joke is my maiden name is Guy. So I was also generally I think there were 5 females in my unit and 25 guys. And I would just be like, well, I'm still one of the guys. You know what I mean? So that was kind of funny. But no, yeah. So I'm both a military spouse and a veteran. But for military spouses, there's Hiring Our Heroes, which accommodates both the military active duty and veteran retired, as well as the military spouse. And so I did a Hiring Our Heroes program, which was fantastic. It wasn't related to the renewables industry, but it gave me an opportunity to see real estate, which got me my interest in doing title work and understanding land development and understanding going through leases and going through purchase options. So that's kind of the route I went, but there's so many opportunities.
And I would just add that spouses are welcome in Project Vanguard.
Yes.
I just don't like the marketing where it's like, we welcome veterans, spouses, military family. It just gets too long and just say veterans and energy, but absolutely want spouses involved. And we do have spouses involved.
Yes. So I'm both. But no, I think that the other way is it's really all about networking and about who you know. I mean, I think I read some statistic that you're more likely to be hired just because you know someone than having an amazing resume, right? As you said, Kevin, there are a lot of recruiters within the Vanguard base. And so it is, I think, we're going through it with my husband right now because he's going to be transitioning out of active duty into the civilian world. And so just translating your resume to something that is applicable in this industry, right? And really project management is fantastic. If you have worked in any type of trades, that's fantastic, definitely needed. And then the other thing is I'd say is just get some training, get some basic understanding. And your experience and your job is very relatable, especially in this industry. If you ever sit in any safety training briefing or, morning briefings out in the field, it's very similar to going through a military briefing. In fact, I was like, are all of you guys sure you're not from the military? Because it was so similar. Going through a order form, those type of things. So procurement's another way that would transition quite easily, I think, from anyone who's worked in logistics within the military. So
Tons of opportunities.
yeah, lots of opportunities. And just be curious, don't be shy, put yourself out there, talk to people, attend hiring events. And yeah, sometimes it just helps if you call human resources and just, say, hey, I'm very interested in this. How do I get into this industry? And, most of the human resource recruiters that I've met are very open just to talking about a great way to get your foot in the door.
No, that's great. Well, Michelle, thanks for making the time today.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to be seeing you more.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin. That was really fun.
No, Michelle, I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into the Project Vanguard podcast. If this episode sparked something for you, share it with someone who's ready to think differently, whether it's about an all-the-above energy approach, how energy security is national security, or the veteran workforce in our industry. If you believe what we're building, a quick review goes a long way. You can do that wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, keep up the fire.